Hi all, it's been a while, but I'm back in my shed. Haven't had very many projects. COVID lockdown just slowed me down with a few things, and now I'm back getting into some. So I've also now started doing a TAFE course in motorcycle mechanics. So some of these videos may seem like very simple, small little things, but they'll actually cover my course content as well. So the course content for today was actually bleed a brake line. I'm actually going to do the rear brake line on my Ducati Monster 696 2009. I have actually changed over not that long ago, a new brake line, new reservoir, and new actual reservoir line, but this brake reservoir line here is sweating terribly. So I have got some new proper rated stuff. I'm going to change it while I'm going with this. That's actually the purpose of what I'm doing today. But at the same time, I'm going to do a brief go through on how to bleed out your rear brakes. It's a very simple thing. As I said, some people will find this not useful at all, and some people might go, that's great. So bear with me. As usual, I'll speed up the boring bits where I'm just stuffing around, and yeah, it shouldn't take very long. Okay, so all the tools that I've got with me today is I've got a vacuum pump, so vacuum bleeder. I've got an 11mm for my nipple, which is an actual bit of an odd size. I've got good old crusty rag that I can slip over everything so my brake fluid doesn't get on anything, and a flathead screwdriver in order to get the hose clamps off, my new bit of hose, and some side cutters. Okay, so I'm just going to pause for a second. I'm going to cover everything up and be ready to go. Okay guys, I've just adjusted the camera angle so you can see a little bit better of where I'm working. You don't need to see me for this. So the first thing is take off your reservoir cap. So you can see I've got a rag in place to protect the paintwork. So the reservoir that I used is Pramac CNC Racing. Got all of it from Sports Bike, Phil Chain. He has looked after me fantastically for all of this. Now make sure that you don't put this anywhere it's going to get dirty. I'm going to put it up on my bench. Okay, so first things first is get the fluid out of the reservoir. I'm going to use the vacuum pump for that. That's what's fantastic about this thing, is that I can use that for this. Or a syringe is also very good to have in your kit ready for that sort of stuff. Okay, so you can see there's the fluid in the reservoir. So next I'm going to take off the hose. Now it's a good idea that if you do have a hose clamp that's got a screwdriver piece like this on it to support where you're actually unscrewing it, where the clamp is, just so the piece that the hose is going into at the bottom of the reservoir or into your master doesn't get warped around. The camera sunk, there we go. Okay, so my hose clamps are off. take the cover off the nipple. Now I was going to be a bit cheeky and just let the fluid drain out of the hose that I'm replacing. Keep fluid in the system. This does not want to come off. There we go. No, it's still in good condition, it just didn't want to come off. Okay. So we're just going to be aware that there is still fluid inside this hose. So, in here. I know I'm going to cover over the camera every now and then, guys, I can't help it. So, pull that off. And take my hose clamps off. So normally if you're just doing a straight bleed, you're not going to be taking this hose off. You would take the fluid out of there, you would top it up with fresh fluid, and you would bleed it out and pull the new fluid through and do it until you've got a good flush through and you're getting the new fluid coming out and all the old fluid out. I'm just jumping a little step by taking this off, and then I'll go on with what a normal bleed would be. So this has got just a little bit of fluid in it, which I'm just going to soak up with this rag. Take it off. I'm just breaking the seal that the hose has. I'm not prying it off or trying to mark anything. But if I just lift the corner up, almost like when you're using a seal pick, it'll just break. You put a little bit of air contact in there and it slides off a bit better. There we go. Okay, so that's the old line. I'll get my new line. So this was a bit of a quick fix. Obviously, yeah, didn't last very long. This stuff here, what has it got here? Temperature rating of 130 degrees Fahrenheit max. And it doesn't have, well, it's got the pressure. It does have a pressure rating. So this is actually Tygon hose. Tygon 2375. I'll see if the camera can pick that up. It's a forward camera, so it might be backwards. But that's what I'm using. I've used that up the front, and it has not sweated whatsoever. It's been fantastic. So I don't know what length I want, and I want to be careful that it doesn't kink. So that's the biggest killer of this stuff. Okay, so it's almost about the same length as the stuff I had, but I need just a little bit more this time. Just because this is a thicker grade, it's thicker walled, and it will kink a lot quicker. But I love this stuff. I made this mistake last time of not being 100% of which one I was putting on, whether it was the offcut or the piece I need. No, 100% that's the piece I want. So I'll put these back on. Just being a little stubborn about going on to the Master. Okay, hose clamp in place, tighten it back up again. The edge. Hose clamps in place. Rotate it around. Okay, I think I've got this hose almost in place. Alright, oh, I did forget one thing. I forgot my .4 fluid. Hang on. Right behind me. Okay, so go on with the bleed. So you would imagine at this point, this is where normally you would have just emptied out the reservoir, pumped that out, done. I did that little extra step. Fill up your reservoir with fresh fluid. Now mine won't show an old colour coming out because this was only just done recently. Okay, we put the spanner onto the so that's the bleed nipple. Put the hose over the top. Okay, so that's all connected into there. So there is a few different ways. You've got people that prefer to do a gravity bleed, people that prefer to do like a pumping of the lever bleed, people that prefer the vacuum bleed. I use a little bit of a combination of all of them, kind of. So I think the vacuum bleed's got its place. It has helped me with some really tough ones before. But I always finish off with a pumping through the brake, making sure that I've got that feel through. So we just get a bit of pump up. So pumping it up a little bit. Crack it. I don't know how clearly you can see that on camera. See if I can get it a little closer. Now the important thing is you do not let this reservoir run dry. Now we've had a lot run through because I just filled that new hose line up with fluid by doing this pump. But you don't want it to run dry because you don't want to pull air through. And that's where normally, if this is still full of fluid, you'd take the old fluid there, top it up, and then you'd bleed it through. You won't get the air going through your line. Unfortunately, I couldn't avoid that because I had to take this off completely and put it back on, so I do have some air coming out of my line. So I've pumped about 2 reservoirs full of fluid through. I'm going to nip that off. And this is when I start doing more of a pump one. So I'll put that down. I'm going to top my reservoir back up with fluid again. I'm going to pump my lever a few times. And then while it's compressed or depressed, I then nip it off. Let fluid and air go through. Keeping it depressed, nip it, and then go again. So holding pressure on, under the nipple, heap of air's coming through, nip it off. I can feel the pressure building in the lever as I do this. Press it on, nip it off. I lose pressure in it, nip it on. I've got a heap of air coming through because of that new line. So you just keep doing this until there are no air bubbles coming out of your nipple. So I've got this in a bad spot. I'm actually going to lift this up. There we go. My spanner was just getting caught on one of the bolts that's in the caliper, so I just moved it. That was a good one. I didn't have very much air come out that time. Pump again. Hold pressure. Fluid. You still got half a reservoir. You keep an eye on that reservoir. Make sure you don't lose it. Compress. Fluid through. Let's see if I can move this over here and you'll be able to see a bit better. You can see what I'm doing there. You'll be able to see the hose a bit better. So same principle if you're doing your front brake or even your clutch. Pump the handle a few times, pull it all the way and hold it in. Open your bleeder. All the pressure will disappear air bubbles will come out. Don't let go of it until you nip it off, and go again. Getting a little low on my reservoir, so I'll top it up. You don't want to overfill your reservoir, otherwise the rubber boot won't fit on with the lid. Oh, it will fit on once it spills everything out on you. You see, I had 1 or 2 air bubbles just then. Oops, ring spanner's slipped off the nipple. No bubbles that time. I like to do it 2, 3 goes with no bubbles before I quit. I've had no bubbles for the last 2, 3 goes. So I want to make sure I've got a good feel in that, which I do. By feel, I mean you don't want it loose and slack. You want to be able to actually feel. So nip that off tight. Remove this. I pinch the end of it as I'm removing it and carefully hold it up. So, because there's fluid still a little bit in the line. I don't want that splashing all over my bike, and immediately move it away from my bike. Just to avoid having brake fluid splash all over the bike. Okay, so get your torque specifications and torque that off. I'm just going to pop that on there. I'll get that done afterwards. Make sure I've got no bubbles in my line. Can't see any. Line's looking good. Okay, I'm going to put the lid back onto my container of .4 before I accidentally kick it over, because I'm terrible for doing that. Get my reservoir cap with the rubber boot. Rubber boot back on. Cap back on. There it goes. Just didn't want to catch its thread. And this billet aluminium stuff, you don't want to force threads, otherwise you end up with scratches. Okay, I'm going to grab the phone and spin you guys around. So, new clear line, hose clamps, that's on. That was the basic. Oh, got my finger over the camera, that's useful. That's the basic bleeding of a line, hydraulic line. So that's the basics. If you were doing a front brake, a clutch, a rear brake, it's all of the same sort of basic principles. The only thing that you might find though is when you're doing the front ones is you will have a bleed nipple on some masters. That just helps to clear the air out of the actual masters, and I find it very useful, especially with the front assemblies. My rear assembly doesn't have a bleed nipple on it, so on my master that is, so that didn't happen. But yeah, thanks for that. Hopefully it helps someone. Okay, bye.